Welcome to the Be Smart podcast, how not to be an idiot with your money. Jared, fresh off your New York trip, we had 4th of July, Rule 62 is out, and now we've got the No Worries paperback out as well. Then, of course, we got markets. I'll let you pick your poison. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked about this much. This is the paperback for No Worries. In case you didn't feel like spending $28 on a hardcover, now you can spend $19.99 on a paperback.
Save yourself $9.
You wait a year, you save $9. So, no, I mean, it's the same book. It actually, I kind of like the design. They did a good job with it, and this is my second book to go from hardcover to paperback. The first one was Street Freak, so it's nice to have a paperback come out. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but a book that comes out in hardcover but then doesn't have a paperback usually didn't do well in hardcover, right?
Okay,
so
I didn't know that.
So an example is actually Barry Hannah, Night Watchman, his second book. Like, it came out in hardcover and it bombed, and he never got a paperback. So this is a good sign.
And then how's Rule 62 doing? I've got my copy here. I've not gotten into it yet. I told you I was reading a little pension first, but you are next in line, man.
Rule 62 is doing good. People are usually like very guarded about sales information. They say, well, it's all right, or it's doing very good. But people don't usually like to talk about the number of copies. I don't really care. I'll talk about it. It has sold about 2,000 copies so far. And whether it sells much more than that really depends on word of mouth. I'm not doing a lot of publicity for this book. I just don't have the energy. For No Worries, I went on like 100 podcasts for the book, and I'm not doing that for Rule 62. So really what I'm hoping is that people will read it, they'll like it, they'll buy copies for their friends, they'll spread the word, right? So Night Moves sold 2,300 copies ish,
which is pretty good for a fiction collection,
for a short story collection. Yeah. Those Bastards, for whatever reason, sold 5,000 copies.
Wow.
Those Bastards was a huge hit, and I think it's because Those Bastards was the first book I had come out with in 7 years. So people were really hungry for a book. Now I'm coming out with books like every 9 months, and people are like, whatever.
You're like Stephen King over here with your output.
We got the Awesome Portfolio coming out next year. My novel coming out after that when I finish that. And I don't really know what's after that. I got a couple short story ideas. I want to make another push for the literary magazines. I still haven't given up on that. So yeah, I'd like to do that at some point in the future.
And how was your 4th of July?
Yeah, it was pretty uneventful. I said we were having a pool party, but only 2 people showed up. So we just kind of splashed around in the pool, and it was fun. And then, and that was on Saturday. No, that was on Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, we had a tropical storm. So it was like torrential downpour for 2 days. And it was good because I just stayed inside and worked. I got stuff done, but didn't do much barbecuing or pool or anything like that.
So you didn't pound 70.5 hot dogs like Joey Chestnut?
I've actually tried eating hot dogs competitively.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I actually tried, and I thought it would be easy. I only ate 9 in 10 minutes, and
that's not bad.
Yeah, 9. I felt pretty sick afterwards. Like,
yeah,
it was.
I would say.
Yeah. I ate 6 in the first 2 minutes, and then it was like 3 over the next 8 minutes. Like, it's hard to describe. Like, when you're full, like, your body just shuts down. Like, it does not let you eat anymore. So I don't know how these people do it.
Yeah, how do you pound 70 plus hot dogs in 10 minutes? That's disgusting. I saw it on TV at my parents' house a few years ago. I haven't watched it since because it was traumatic. I mean, that was so gross. But yeah, I pounded 6 hot dogs over the course of the weekend, and I'm off hot dogs. No more. Can't do it. Okay, we've got a lot of stuff and markets to go over. You want to jump in?
Yeah.
So for our first headline, Trump tariff deadline approaches with stocks at record highs. Stocks ended last week at record highs as a better than expected June jobs report cooled fears of a broader slowdown brewing in the US economy. The S&P ended the week at a record close. The Nasdaq also ended the week at a record close, and the Dow on July 3rd was roughly 300 points from its own record. Let's loop in the June jobs report before we dig into this. The U.S. economy added 147,000 non-farm payrolls in June, more than the 106K expected. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate fell unexpectedly to 4.1%. Economists had expected the rate to move higher to 4.3%. And then following the jobs report, increasing bets on a July interest rate cut from the Fed reversed. On Friday, the markets were pricing in just a 5% chance the central bank would lower its rates at the July meeting, down from 24% seen just a day prior. Does this feed into the forecast of a slowing but solid economy, or do stocks' recent records give you any pause?
The technicals aren't so great for stocks, but it's hard to be short. Unless it's like a perfect setup. The payroll report was okay. I mean, we were pricing in, I think, 106,000 jobs. I think that was the consensus estimate, and 147 was significantly better, plus 4.1 on the unemployment rate. Basically the market was very much leaning towards a softer number, especially after ADP came out negative 2 days before, right? So basically it was a decent number. The dollar got a little stronger. Stocks have just been kind of in a range. When I walked in here, today being Tuesday, stocks were pretty much on the day. There's not a lot going on.
Transitioning from the jobs report to what's happening with job cuts. Through May, employers have announced 696,309 job cuts, an increase of 80% from the figure announced in the first 5 months of last year. It is 65,049 cuts away from matching the entire year's total for 2024. So this is the highest number of job cuts in the first 5 months of any year since 2020. What does this mean for the Fed's rate cutting approach if this trend continues?
This is the first time I've heard those numbers. That 690, what'd you say, 690 something thousand in 6 months, basically. That's a fair amount. It's definitely not recession territory. But look, the thing with rate cuts is it's all political. That's really what's going on, right? So as we know, Powell is giving the middle finger to Trump. Rates should be lower, probably about 100 basis points. Powell isn't going to do it. The Fed isn't going to do it. Trump is going to announce Powell's replacement, whether it's Kevin Hassett or Kevin Warsh or somebody else. And that person is going to be commenting on rates while Powell is still in office. And in terms of trading, there isn't much to do. We already have I want to say 6 rate cuts priced in over the next year. So I don't really the only thing that takes the rate cuts out is a blazing hot inflation number or a blazing hot payroll number, which I don't think we're going to get. So if I were to chart the path of Fed funds going forward, I'd say we'd be on hold for about 9 months to a year. And then we're going to cut 100 to 150 basis points. And then Trump is going to want the Fed to cut more. And, Kevin Hassett or whoever is Fed chair is going to refuse. And we're going to have this fight all over again. So that's kind of what I think is going to happen.
For our last headline, Adam Crawford actually put this on my radar. He's your analyst for Street Freak and the Strategic Portfolio, for those who don't know. This is something Eric Balchunas tweeted from a Jackie Wong. In the iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF's first 341 days of existence, that's IBIT, the fund's assets under management have surged to over $70 billion. That's the fastest time any ETF has ever grown to $70 billion, 5 times faster than previous record of 1,691 days held by GLD. Does this scream bubble to you?
Kind of. I'm not really crazy about the price action of Bitcoin. Someone sent me something about like Bitcoin treasuries, how there's like 170 Bitcoin treasuries out there. There's only like 1 million Bitcoin left to be mined. The price action is kind of funky. Like to answer your question, it does kind of smell like a bubble. I haven't sniffed out a chart of Bitcoin in a while. I don't really have a strong opinion. The nice thing about IBIT, the ETF, is that I think there's options on it. I think options started trading on it, which makes it really the only way you can trade options on Bitcoin without going over the counter. So I could be wrong on that. I don't know if they have options, but usually they do by this point. So yeah, I'm slightly on the bearish side, but I'm not gonna spend any capital on it.
I got a couple main topics for you. The first one is the continued gamification of financial markets. The idea here being that FOMO and speculative bets are driving the 2025 market rally. Palantir, sometimes described as the quintessential meme stock, and Super Microcomputer, the most heavily shorted stock in the S&P in April, have been among the top performing equities this year, far outpacing the broader index. As Liz Ann Saunders put it, retail traders' fingerprints are all over this, and there's actually even been an uptick in trading penny stocks. Is this a sentiment indicator for you, this highly speculative sort of buy now, ask questions later approach? And is it a sign of a market top?
This phenomenon where you have these stocks with a lot of retail participation and a lot of short interest making new highs, that kind of happens all the time in bull markets. There's always some cast of characters like these crappy stocks with high short interest. In fact, it's actually a factor. Like, I don't know if you know what a factor is, but a factor is basically a group of stocks with the same characteristic. And there actually is a heavily shorted factor, like a short interest factor. So if you see the heavily shorted stocks going up, it's usually a sign that you're getting close to a top, which kind of matches up with what I said before about how I didn't really like the technicals with the S&P. I do want to talk about something really quick. I don't think you have this in your notes because it just happened. But Trump just announced about an hour ago that he was imposing a 50% tariff on copper.
Didn't see that. Nope.
Yeah. So copper went up at one point 17% in response to this tariffs. It's now up about 10%. Okay. This doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because if you're going to tax widgets, okay, coming from France, basically the idea is you're trying to get the French company to reshore its manufacturing to the US, right? But with copper, you can't control where the copper mines are. Like if the copper mine is in the Congo, you can't move it to the US. So really the only point of putting a tariff on copper is you're trying to generate revenue or you're just trying to piss people off. But like a 50% tariff on copper. So if you think about it, so prices went from about $5 a pound to $5.50 a pound. The cost of building a house is now a couple percent higher, right? Like, I had been saying before that tariffs were deflationary, and to a certain respect they are, but this is an example of a tariff that's actually inflationary, right? Like if you're a builder, if you're a contractor, if you're sourcing copper to build a house, like it is literally now 10% more expensive, and that gets passed on to the consumer.
And then our last main topic, I want to talk about this idea of disdain for billionaires maybe reaching a boiling point. And we're going to start with your boy, Zoran Mamdani, which I know you have thoughts on. The surprise victory in New York City's Democratic mayoral primary has billionaires pretty pissed off. We've got Bill Ackman said he's ready to contribute hundreds of millions of dollars to a rival. And then Trump said on Truth, as president of the United States, I'm not going to let this communist lunatic destroy New York. Rest assured, I hold all the levers and have all the cards. I'll save New York City and make it hot and great again. Okay. Just like I did with the good old USA. And then as a parallel to Mamdani opposition, there was a lot of resistance to this very over-the-top, tone-deaf, multi-day Bezos wedding fiasco in Venice. I guess basically what I'm wondering is if everyone has kind of had enough of this crap, this extreme wealth inequality. And honestly, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on Mamdani's primary win.
I've talked to a lot of people in New York about Mamdani, and they're kind of sanguine about it. They're like, he's, there's going to be some more homeless people. The city's going to be a little dirtier, but it's just really going to be business as usual. It'll be fine, because these communists, they're incompetent. De Blasio wasn't competent, and people are just operating under the assumption that New York is going to be fine, just like it always is, and life is going to go on. I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. Bill de Blasio was also a communist, really ideologically not different from Mamdani. The difference is that de Blasio was lazy. He was one of the laziest politicians in history. Know somebody who used to work out at de Blasio's gym. And he basically would get there at like 10 a.m. and work out until noon and then go to the mayor's office for like the afternoon. And like that was all the work he was doing. Like he was very lazy. Mamdani is a radical. Like he's a radical communist. And if you look at some of the stuff he's posted on Twitter and even some of the stuff he said since he's won the primary, like he is not changing his spots. Like he is an absolute communist. So if you think about what he's capable of doing, like one of the things they talked about was the government-run grocery stores. I really think that's the tip of the iceberg. The biggest threat for New York City, Mamdani can't do much about taxes. He says he can, but he can't. Any tax increase has to be approved by the state legislature. So I'm reasonably confident that taxes are going to stay pretty much constant. But rent control is really the big issue. And rent control is what destroyed New York in the 60s and 70s. They made a movie about it. It was called Taxi Driver. That's really what I lived in New York from 1979 to 1981. And people think that there's crime in New York now. Like, oh my God, like back then it was a free for all. So, I even wrote in the Daily Dirt app, like if this guy gets elected, after the inauguration, I'm not going back to New York. I'm just not. It's not going to be safe. It's going to be disgusting. And, God knows what will happen.
Well, how was your latest trip to New York? Did it go well?
It did go well. Got some good business done. Yeah.
Nice. Let's go to the week ahead. The deadline for the U.S. to negotiate reciprocal tariffs was on Wednesday. I believe Trump has pushed that back to August 1st. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then we've got the Federal Reserve meeting minutes, consumer credit levels, and initial jobless claims this week. Any of these on your radar?
This is going to be a very quiet week. The minutes aren't going to say much. We already know what's going on at the Fed. We actually got what's interesting is that last week, since payrolls were on a Thursday, we got claims the same day as payrolls, and claims were a little bit stronger. They came in at 235. So claims seem to have stopped getting worse for now. We'll see what comes out this week. But yeah, this is an extremely light week for data.
That's all we got for this week. Make sure you buy Rule 62. If you want to save $9, get the paperback of No Worries. Jared, good talking to you. I'll talk to you here soon, and I'll see you next week in Nashville.
Yes. See you later.
Later.